Hello and most welcome to 2007 of the series. We will today take up a new article. It is by Terry Marks-Tarlow, a fractal geometry as a bridge between realms. And it's from her book. I'll get back to the name. Abstract. This chapter, which is chapter 2, page 25, takes up the following. This chapter describes fractal geometry as a bridge between the imaginary and the real, mind and matter, conscious and the unconscious, fractals are multidimensional objects with self-similar detail across size and or timescales. Jung conceived of number as the most primitive archetype of order, serving to link observers with the observed. The observed. Whereas Jung focused on natural numbers. Natural numbers as a foundation for order that is already conscious in the observer. I offer up the fractal geometry as the underpinnings for a dynamic, unconscious, destined never to become fully conscious. Never to become fully conscious. Throughout nature, fractals model the complex, recursively branching structures of self-organizing systems. Self-organizing systems. When they serve at the edges of open systems, fractal boundaries articulate a paradoxical zone that simultaneously separates as it connects. As it connects. As it connects. When modeled by Spencer Brown's mathematical notation, full interpenetration between inside and outside edges translates to a distinction that leads to no distinction. No distinction. No distinction. By occupying the infinitely deep space between dimensions and levels of existence, fractal boundaries contribute to the notion of intersubjectivity, where self and other become most entwined. Entwined. They also exemplify re-entry dynamics of Varela's autonomous systems, plus Hofstadter's ever elusive tangled hierarchy between brain and mind. Between brain and mind. Introduction. Any distinction is wholly imaginary, an act of creation, an act of imagination. Each proof that convinces is a proof that uses imaginary values to reason to a true answer. Mathematics is about the consequence of making a distinction, as if there were such a thing as a distinction. A distinction. A distinction. It is all imaginary, and only the imaginary is real. Lewis Kaufman. Or Louis Kaufman. The capacity to make distinctions between this and that lies at the base of human consciousness. Human consciousness. Human consciousness. Human consciousness. Throughout the lifespan, a key distinction involves discerning inner from outer processes. Inner from outer processes. That is, we must distinguish products of imagination, memory, and dreams from outside objects, people, and events in the environment. British psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott introduces the significance of childhood play for creating, discovering inner versus outer realms of experience. By speculating that symbol, self, and culture all emerge in the transitional space between mother and child. Mother and child. Likewise, Australian psychiatrist Russell Mears details development processes by which young children shuttle back and forth between incorporating outside objects into imaginary play and breaking away from play by attending to goings in the immediate environment. Through this shuttling of attention, an ever-moving boundary is established between the interior dialogue of the personal self and the exterior dialogue of a social self. A social self. The coastline of Norway. whereas children's inner focus dictates the perspective of the observer, their outer focus illuminates objects and territory under observation. Under observation. We might assume clear distinctions exist between observers and observes. But this is not necessarily the case. When a schizophrenic cannot tell the difference between an object hallucinated and one that exists in reality, fuzzy boundaries between inner and outer realms become the stuff of psychosis. Yet similar fuzzy boundaries also characterize the mindsets of visionaries able to make the dreams come true. The dreams come true. The dreams come true. The dreams come true. Clean boundaries between inner and outer realms imply a Cartesian split as represented by the true false either or distinctions of classic Aristotelian logic. According to this view, something either exists inside the observer, inside the observer, inside the observer, inside the observer. Or outside, but not in both places at once. At once, at once. By contrast, fuzzy boundaries offer more choices, with fuzzy logic permitting an infinite number of distinctions between true and false. This is illustrated by the fuzzy logic cube in figure 2. If 1 and 0 represent true and false respectively, then the cube's corners are anchored by binary sets that characterize traditional logic. Traditional logic. Traditional logic. Traditional logic. Inside the cube, a variety of fuzzy sets express degrees of truth, with the center occupying the completely ambiguous, if not paradoxical, position of being just as true as it is false. As it is false. Excuse me. As it is false. False. Writing about that magical, ambiguous zone between observer and observed, Lou Kaufman examines various systems of logic and mathematics. 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 Hi. As the epigraph above indicates, Kaufman highlights paradox as he underscores the hidden action of the imaginary in bringing forth the real world of everyday distinctions. This chapter follows in the paradoxical spirit of Winnicott and Kaufman by investigating the play between imaginary, real, observer, and observed as detectable within fractal geometry. Within fractal geometry. I argue for the importance of fractal dynamics to model entangled relations between observer of and observed, where each fully interpenetrates the other. The other. By understanding the broad foundation of fractal geometry as it involves infinite recursion on the imaginary plane, we can enhance our understanding of reality as finitely perceived in nature, as finitely perceived in nature. In nature. In nature. In nature. Conversely, by comprehending how fractals manifest ubiquitously at the joints in nature, we can expand our understanding of the infinitely extending self-referential nature of mind, of mind, of mind. Of special interest here is the deep relativity that exists between observer and observed. Between observer and observed. Between observer and observed. At all scales of observation, such that the closer we look, the more we can see. The more we can see. the more we can see. I introduce self-similarity as a newly discovered symmetry in nature that represents the sign of identity. Identity! Identity! Explored semiotically, self-similarity can be seen as a distinction that leads to no distinction, to no distinction. I relate this paradoxical equivalence of change and no change to the operation of cancellation within Spencer Brown's arithmetic of first distinctions, as well as to Varela's re-entry dynamics characteristics of autonomous systems. Autonomous systems. Autonomous systems. Autonomous systems. My main thesis is that fractal boundaries, whether between inside, outside, self, other, subjective, objective, levels of conscious, unconscious underpinnings of experience represents an imaginary real foundation for the entangled co-creation of world and psyche, of world and psyche, of world and psyche. Number as the archetype for conscious order, for conscious order. If a group of objects is deprived of every single one of its properties or characteristics, there still remains at the end its number, which seems to indicate that number is something irreducible, helps more than anything else to bring order into the chaos of appearances. Carl Jung. Carl Jung. Carl Jung. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung came to view number as the most primitive quality of existence. By existence of existence, to exist or not exist, to be or not to be, that is the question. By crafting an archetypal theory, his theory of number doubled over as a theory of mind. As a theory of mind. Jung attributed to number the power to bring order into the chaos of appearances, referring to material existence not as objectively conceived, not as objectively conceived, but rather as subjectively perceived by an observer. By an observer. Here, number links observers and observed, inner and outer worlds, in a way parallel to second order cybernetics. Cybernetics. In the footsteps of Margaret Mead and Heinz von Förster, this viewpoint is carried forth eloquently by the musings of Ranulph Glanville. For instance, the whole point of second order cybernetics is that it asserts there is no observation without the observer. There is nothing spoken without a speaker. There is no action without an actor. There is no action without an actor. Jung viewed number as the realm where mind and matter meet, sometimes referred to as the psychoid level of existence, and at other times at other times the unus mundus, one world. Jung intuited that the realm of mathematical abstraction is discovered insofar as it uncovers quantitative facts about the workings of the external world. The external world. The external world. Oh. At the same time, it is invented as an abstraction in the mind, indicating something qualitative about the subjective realm of meaning. As the most fundamental subjective realm of meaning, for Jung, number serves as the most fundamental structure of perceived reality, the place where observers and observed merge at the level of synchronicity, symbol, and meaning. In building a bridge between mind and matter, Jung and his dedicated follower Marie-Louise von Franz were interested primarily in the counting numbers as symbols and founts of inexhaustible metaphor during the production of conscious experience. Conscious experience. Conscious experience. Whether in dream, mythology, or art, the number one tends to symbolize undifferentiated unity. Two signifies the first distinction of duality. 3 indicates dynamic change and movement away from the static opposition. 4 suggests stable manifestation. Stable manifestation. In this chapter, I depart from the natural numbers that interested Young to number as manifested naturally in what Benoit Mandelbrot calls the fractal geometry of nature. Of nature, of nature. I argue for a link between imaginary numbers as iterated recursively on the complex plane and self-reflexive underpinnings of the dynamic unconscious. The dynamic unconscious. The dynamic unconscious. A precedent for my approach exists in the work of Jungian psychologist and mathematician Robin Robertson. Robertson advances Jung's search for the archetype of order by tracing a history of qualitative development of human consciousness based on the evolution of quantitative mathematical discovery. Quantitative mathematical discovery. Robertson identifies four stages of evolution, which I describe next before placing the fractal geometry into the context of the fourth. Of the fourth The first stage involves knowledge of the counting numbers as relates to primitive consciousness, characteristic of many traditional tribes and young children. Young children. Young children. Here, the inner contents of the unconscious are unwittingly projected into outer conscious experience. In cybernetic terms, observer and observed are unconsciously merged during the act of discovering distinctions in ongoing experience. Ongoing experience. Ongoing experience. Experience. Ongoing experience. Translated into the language of contemporary neuroscience. This stage depends upon procedural and implicit memory, whose capacity is hardwired into the primitive brain. Into the primitive brain. This type of memory is unconscious, unconscious, unconscious. Unconscious. In the more contemporary meaning of the word, embraced by neuroscientists like Jack Pank's Alan Shore, and Daniel Seal. Daniel Seal. Whereas Freud's Consists of repressed knowledge dynamically pushed beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Contemporary neuroscientists view much of the brain's work as unconscious in a different sense. Unconscious in a different sense. The self-organization of autonomic and limbic systems occur subcortically beneath the threshold of consciousness, operating on time scales too rapid ever to reach conscious awareness. This distinction between material pushed out of awareness and that which awareness can never reach becomes critical to my later assertion of fractal geometry as the abstract formalization for the ever receding threshold between conscious and unconscious processes. Conscious and unconscious processes. And there I put a little stop. Conscious and unconscious. I'll go to page 26. And here is a little take from Donald Winnicott. The childhood play is creating, discovering inner versus outer realms of experience at the same time, going on simultaneously. Fantasy is not only by sheer innerness, neither is it sheer outerness. It's an interpenetrative, both at the same time. Interpenetration. And on the next column, first paragraph, through this, begins actually in the first column, through this shuttling of attention, an ever-moving boundary is established between the interior dialogue of a personal self and the exterior dialogue of a social self. Of a social self. So they are both present, both sides at the same time. I would say they are mutually excluding, but still taking place simultaneously, absolutely separable, but also absolutely inseparable, simultaneously and not at the same time. That's the child's play. On the second paragraph, on the column to the right, on page 26. On page 26. We might assume, sorry. So they are going into each other like the coastline of Norway, interpenetrating, making for the possibility of border, but also sameness at the same time. Go to page 27, the first column, 6 or 7 lines down. Clear boundaries between inner and outer realms imply a Cartesian split as represented by the true-false either-or distinctions of classic Aristotelian logic. Once more, we sort of slide into the either-or situation, which is the dualism at its worst, when it's definitely either-or. This humorless, non-imaginary, non-fantastical or phantasmagorical limitation of everything. Where we have little freedom for thinking, being, understanding, existing. And if we go to the second column, I will read mid-in. By investigating the play, the second line, the play between imaginary, real, observe as detectable within fractal geometry. They are going into each other. Nothing observed with others without an observer, but also vice versa. It is the point here, it is an interconnectedness. They go into each other. And as you can see in the fuzzy logic cube, all possibilities are still present at the same time as you have pretty definite results. One thing doesn't exclude the other. One thing doesn't exclude the other. They are interconnected. We go to the next page, 28. we will have on the first column fourth line, Jung attributed to number the power to bring order into the chaos of appearances, referring to material existence not as objectively conceived, but rather as subjectively perceived by an observer. So funny and oddly enough, it can be completely absent, not present at all, the observer, but that is a part of the complex web of global relations, something that Carlo Rovelli calls quantum relativity. Which involves everything, all of it. And this is the weirdness of complementarity as well as fractality. Isn't that fantastic? On the second paragraph, in the second paragraph, we read 10 lines down circa. For Jung, number serve as the most fundamental structure of perceived reality, the place where observers and observed merge at the level of synchronicity, symbol and meaning. Synchronicity is where observer and observed meet. It is when our fantasy imaginary also reach the imaginary, the thing that reaches the eye, both at the same time. Both at the same time, not one without the other, but they both coexist. They are both here. Go into the second column here. And it's on the second paragraph, around 10 lines down. Translated into the language of contemporary neuroscience, this stage depends upon procedural and implicit memory, whose capacity is hardwired into the primitive brain. Hardwired into the primitive brain. So we have unconscious fractality memory and deeper layers beyond or beneath what we consciously can reach, can understand. So our innerness has an enormity of deeper and ever deeper levels. that are constantly or permanently or continually, maybe, I mean, continually is probably the best word, continually interpenetrating into the outer, never to cease. But there might not be, in this very moment, reachable by our conscious thinking, our conscious awareness. It has almost everything beneath and beyond. And that is also repeated on the, a bit further down from where we read. The self-organization of autonomic or limbic systems occurs subcortically beneath the threshold of consciousness, operating on time scales too rapid ever to reach conscious awareness. So this is co-creative in reality itself. So this is why investigating into reality could be at a certain extent the same as investigating into one's own reality, one's own inner depth, from where it all stems. And some of those layers are terra incognita. We need to reach deeper and deeper. And by that, I say thank you very much for engaging in Terry Marks-Tarlow, second chapter, Fractal Geometry as a bridge between realms. Thank you very much. Have a very pleasant morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.